Love him or hate him, Max Verstappen has certainly made already a lasting impression on the sport of Formula 1, and not just because he is now the reigning Drivers' World Champion. Minimum age rules have been brought in, the Verstappen rule was brought in, and he's had an impact in a number of other areas in the sport as well. So here at GPFans, here's a quick special on the impact of Max Verstappen in the world of F1. Now, it's not all going to be about Max Verstappen this off-season here at GPFans, so make sure you hit the subscribe button down below to stay up to date with all of the news and content that we produce here at the channel. But this one is going to be about Max, as we look at the 24-year-old's impact in the sport. Max Verstappen first appeared in Formula 1 at the age of just 16. In the 2014 season, he was allowed to take care of free practice in Japan on behalf of Toro Rosso. The following season, aged just 17, he made his official debut as a Formula 1 driver. Not long after that came the move to Red Bull Racing, where at the age of just 18, he became the youngest Grand Prix winner in the history of the sport in Barcelona, a record that will not soon be broken. The minimum age in Formula 1. The announcement in 2014 that a 16-year-old boy would do a free practice session in Formula 1 caused quite a stir. Some even spoke of it as a really negative move for the sport, and you can understand why. Formula 1 is a dangerous sport. It always has been, and it always will be. Look at Romain Grosjean's crash in Bahrain in 2020, or Verstappen's mega collision with the barriers at Silverstone this year. The idea that you could have an accident on track with, let's call it, a less favourable outcome while, legally speaking, a child is behind the wheel, it feels very awkward and, I have to say, a little bit disgusting. On the 3rd of December 2014, the FIA therefore announced that from 2016 a minimum age of 18 years would apply for Formula 1. Well, it wouldn't necessarily be an application for Formula 1, it would be more that you weren't able to get a super license, which is essential to be allowed to drive in the premier class of motorsport. If the motorsport body had decided to apply this rule from 2015, the Dutchman would not have been able to make his debut until a year later. However, we should now make it clear that Verstappen quite clearly was ready at the time, and it probably is a move that Formula 1 and Red Bull don't regret too much. More young drivers at the top teams. Here's a good rule of thumb for life. Regardless of whatever you're doing, it's always good to follow a good example. It just makes logical sense. Now, except for Red Bull Racing, Formula 1 teams have always been a bit hesitant about young drivers. I guess relatively young because top athletes start at all sports at a very, very young age. But there is a big difference between a driver of 22 and a driver of 16, as Max was when he made his first steps into Formula 1, legally speaking, and of course in your experience of actually driving a car. In the years after Verstappen's arrival, however, more and more teams gave the benefit of the doubt to young drivers. Now, is this all because of Max Verstappen? Probably not. But is it a coincidence? Well, it's probably not that either. Think, for example, of the likes of Lando Norris, George Russell and Charles Leclerc, all drivers who made their debut in Formula 1 before the age of 20. Pierre Gasly and Alexander Albon also appeared at a very young age in the sport, although they did that through the Red Bull Young Driver Training Program. The lineups of a number of teams have also been considerably rejuvenated as a result. McLaren, for example, drove in 2019 and 2020 with the young pair of Norris and Carlos Sainz behind the wheel. Ferrari currently has Sainz and Leclerc in their cockpit for this last season. Yet the Italian superpower in the past always used to go for more experienced drivers, preferably with a championship already in their back pocket. Look at Sebastian Vettel and Kimi Raikkonen, for example. They formed the lineup for the Scuderia in 2015 to 2019. Popularity in the Netherlands. Verstappen also has a huge fan base worldwide, but especially, of course, in the Netherlands, where he's breathed new life into Formula 1. The Premier Division of motorsport has become more popular in Holland than ever before since 2016, of course mainly because of Verstappen and his performances. It has resulted, among other things, in the return of the Dutch Grand Prix and more attention for young Dutch driving talent. The popularity of Verstappen is also a big plus for Red Bull Racing and Formula 1 itself, not only behind the wheel, but also in terms of a marketing and global exposure sense. In a sense, Verstappen even creates jobs, because never before have so many news platforms and television channels in Holland been so interested in Formula 1. The Max Verstappen rule. And then of course you have the Max Verstappen rule. Soon after his debut, the Dutchman scored highly with his outrageous overtaking manoeuvres and sometimes too aggressive driving style. Today, Verstappen is one of the most feared drivers on the grid due to his barrier-pushing track performances. But in his younger years, his colleagues in particular were not always too happy with him and his antics on track. Not that they are now either for a lot of them. Verstappen moved regularly in defence during braking, which made it extremely difficult for the driver behind to pass him. However, it was also highly dangerous. For example, if you start braking on the right side of the lane, your competitor will try and pass you on the left. If you suddenly move to the left yourself, the chance of an incident is very, very high. The FIA therefore introduced a rule in 2016 that if a driver moved while braking, this would be reported directly to the stewards, the Max Verstappen rule. The following season, however, the FIA partially reversed this rule. The motorsport body realised that the drivers do need a bit more freedom in their defensive tactics, so relaxed the agreement a bit, saying, "Earlier we said that every movement under braking would be examined." Charlie Whiting said at the time, "Now we have a simple rule that says if a driver moves erratically, drives unnecessarily slowly, or behaves in a way that endangers another driver, he will be investigated." So it's a very broad rule now. Sounds a little bit like some of the driving that we saw in Saudi Arabia earlier this year. I'll just let everybody else ponder on that one. Perhaps let us know your thoughts in the comments section down below, and of course hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with all we do here at the channel as we move into this brand new off season, going into the new regulations of 2022 in Formula 1 here at GPFans.